All right, hello everybody. I think if you've been to one of these meetings, it's very casual. We're just here to chat. But I just wanted to go over some things that we have set in place just so we make it a safe space. The first thing is that we're going to hear from our speakers first, and then we'll open up the space for folks to comment, ask questions. There's been a lot going on with the movement, so feel free to ask all your questions, and we're going to run it like Clubhouse, so just raise your hand or drop something in the chat to let us know that you'd like to speak, just so we're a little organized with our speaking system. This is a brave space, so there might be something that someone says that challenges your thoughts, and we're here to work through that together. At the same time, that this is a safe space, so we want to make sure that we have a zero tolerance policy for anything that is racist, sexist, and misogynist, homophobic. We want to make sure that this space is also safe for all our community members. Feel free to react to our speakers using the reactions in Zoom. And this will be recorded. And we're planning to do more monthly meetings, so each of these kind of meetings will be recorded. So thank you, and I appreciate you all being here. And as in general, trigger warning of what we will be speaking about, and just be mindful of the topics that we will be speaking about. If you need to leave and then come back into the Zoom room, feel free to do that. If you need to go off camera and mute, feel free to do that as well. I'll pass it to Marcus.
Hi, we would like to honor the Algonquin, the Mohawk, the Anishinaabe, the Seminole, the Timucua, the Chiriquis, the Anshuani, and Yuki, and Iura, and Wurundjeri, and many other people on those unceded traditional territories. The speakers and moderators are located. We extend this respect to all First Nations, Inuit, Métis people, their ancestors, their elders, and their valuable past and present contributions to this land. We recognize the impact and legacy of colonization and ongoing systemic racism on the life of First Nations, Inuit, Métis people, and are strongly committed to actions that promote truth and reconciliation with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people and communities.
All right, thank you, Marcus. Thank you, Lydia. Thank you all for joining us. This is our first of many more conversations that we're going to be having in 2022. I thought, and my team, that it would be a good idea to have a monthly meeting. So we will be meeting every second, well, after today, every first Sunday of every month. And every month we'll have new speakers, new topics, and we're really going to try to work on exposing more truths and education. We have some mental health professionals with us here as well. We do have survivors that have joined us as well. We have people that are going to possibly pop in with our conversation and fill us in on what's going on with some of the cases that we've been following and exposing. So I guess I wanted to kind of give you guys an update on what the heck happened in 2021. We started, as you all know, the movement July 12th, 2020. And then, you know, it's kind of just been insane from there. We started 2021 in the middle of dealing with multiple cases that I'd exposed on social media. And those were including Yusuf Shahada, who is still a priest in the New York area. He's been on YouTube lives serving at the church there, even with Bishop David. So he's still very much an active priest. He has over an 18-year history of sexual abuse that's been reported to the church. They are aware, and he has been, in 2020, was completely terminated from the Pennsylvania diocese by his bishop for sexual misconduct in writing. And then Bishop David, I guess, decided to take him into his area in New York. So that's all the updates that we really have on Yusuf Shahada at this time. Shinura Noir, Hanan might be able to answer some of our questions there. She's in Sydney, Australia. And so in Sydney, we've had Shinura Noir is a sexual abuser. He's sexually abused children. He also has a very long history that's been reported to the church and to the Royal Commission. And just recently, just a couple weeks ago, I think, there was an article released in that area as well, with other survivors that have come forward and told their stories. There was a priest that was, besides Shinura Noir, there was a priest unnamed and a servant that had been sexually abusing children. And so this is in that article as well. As far as Samuel Bullis, another abuser that we exposed, he's still a priest. Really, they've all, since the start of the movement, any priests that have been either publicly exposed or privately dealt with between survivors and the church they've remained in priesthood. They're all still actively serving. Salaries are getting paid to these abusers. Legal fees the church is paying for some abusers to actually sue their victims. We have a survivor with us here, Sameh. She'll be joining us if anyone has any questions for her. She's actually, we do have some good news. So one good thing that did happen is Sameh actually filed a case against her abuser. And she's just been going through I don't even know. Sameh, you can share with us if you want. I want to give you the floor to speak if you feel free at any time. Feel free at any time if you'd like to. But just to fill you in a little bit on what Sameh has been going through, she was actually sexually assaulted by Pope Tawadros' first cousin, Antonios Be'i, in the Northern California area, in the Bay Area. He had papers served to her during Holy Week of 2021, filing a defamation case against her and her husband. They have not mentioned his name at all. She simply told her story. If anything, I shared his name and called him a rapist because he is. There's evidence of that. And so he decided to sue his victim for defamation, and the church is paying for these legal fees. The Pope is aware, and the Pope has done everything possible to cover this up. This priest was investigated by two committees, or was supposed to be investigated by one in 2020. Bishop David had a team policy approved by the Pope in the archdiocese, and they were supposed to be able to investigate these cases that were reported to them, and the Pope just kind of canceled it, and that entire team resigned. We don't even really have any clear answers as to if they still exist or not, or if they're investigating anything else. All I know is that all the cases that were reported to them have been covered up, and that the team actually didn't agree with the Pope and leadership's decision, and they resigned. This team was made up of priests and lawyers hired by the church. When Be'i, the rapist, was, that investigation was canceled. Again, this is end of 2020 in October. A new committee was assigned by Pope Tawadros, made up of 2 lawyers that he hired, and 3 priests that are under Be'i. Not much I can say about that, except for they did not declare him innocent. But a statement was released by Be'i's church without a signature. We don't know who really drafted it, saying that this committee found him innocent, and that the district attorney has declined to pursue charges. Now that made people think that there is no case against him, there was no evidence, that nothing's going on. That's a lie. We spoke to the committee that was investigating, and the Pope actually halted their investigation in the middle. before they could interview the rest of the victims, but based on just the very little information that they had, they did not find him innocent at all. So whatever was mentioned in that statement that was released was a complete lie. Next thing that happened was Be'i sued Samah, and then shortly after Samah, we've been working with a lawyer, actually helping her and the victims over there. He's been really great, him and his team. And so she was able to file a case against Antonios Be'i in return. So now we are in the middle of this case. Samah and her husband have to go through a lot. Her family has been suffering a great deal. They've been completely mistreated by a lot of people from their community and from their church, including their children as well, have been harassed. Be'i has found a way somehow to turn all these people against this victim and her family. He's currentently lying and saying that there is no cases, or there are no cases against him, but in fact, there's still an open case criminally. The DA never closed that case. They're not going to. They're still accepting evidence. They haven't charged yet, but we hope that they will reconsider or consider what's happening in the civil case, and we're going to keep pushing until they charge him with criminal charges. But right now, Samah is in a civil case with an attorney, and so we're going to continue with that and provide all the information that they need. Samah will have to suffer. I say suffer because it's a tough thing to go through for a victim. She's going to have to suffer through a deposition. And in a lot of these cases, the victim is really almost put on trial as well. And so when people ask, why didn't she just report it to the police? Why didn't she just sue the guy? This is why. It is a very difficult process to go through. It's why a lot of survivors don't even report or don't continue with their legal cases against their abusers. So just want to pray for Samah and her family and send her all the love and support that we can through this process. This year is going to be a big year. I anticipate in the next few months, we're going to be hearing a lot more news about this case. Samah does want to go to trial, and I believe that's where we're headed at this time. And I think that's all I can say about that case. So just keep following the Antonios Be'i case, Shinura Noir, Yusuf Shahada, Samuel Bullis. Those are the ones that we've exposed publicly so far. But I want to let you guys know that up until yesterday, I'm still getting new survivors reporting their abuse. It hasn't stopped. I think I've lost count for sure. And we do have hundreds of abusers that need to still be exposed in the Coptic Church that are clergy, including priests, monks, and bishops. And there is evidence for all of that. Well, most of it. So now I guess I want to kind of discuss what the issue is right now systemically. And I kind of want you guys to join in on this conversation and hear your questions and try to answer them as best as I can. I also want to share that I started the year in 2021 off with putting out a video that was a message of hope for our church, for survivors, for our leaders. And in this message, I begged Pope Tawadros and the hierarchy to take action. And we ended the year by me being invited to speak in a Coptic church for the first time since I came out publicly. And within hours of that being announced on social media, Pope Tawadros canceled my talk in the church. So that's how we ended the year, is Pope Tawadros still trying to silence me, although I was not even going to have a talk in the church about any abusers. I was going to have a talk with the church about my journey with Christ through trauma and my road to discipleship. And it was really going to be, you know, something, just sharing my own experience and really from a spiritual perspective. I don't have any clear answers as to why I've been canceled by Pope Tawadros. I have not been excommunicated as of now yet. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I know I'm not allowed to speak in Coptic churches. And Pope Tawadros is willing to take action against any priests that show their support towards me or allow me to come and speak in their churches. So that's where we're at. If anything, I believe this is getting worse. Since I came out, abusers now know that the church will protect them. The church has proven to us that they will protect all their clergy at any cost, even at the cost of survivors' lives. And they haven't offered any support to any survivors at all. So they've spent the year attacking survivors with legal cases, attacking survivors by turning their entire communities on them, and of course, spreading lies. And yeah, bishops have just continued to relocate these abusers and continue covering up for them. That's where we're at. I want to open the floor. Also, there have been some cases recently. I don't know if you guys have seen or heard, but there is a huge number of servants as well now that stories are coming out that they are abusers. Another success I want to share with you guys before we open the floor is Michael Fahmy. He's actually the first servant in the Coptic Church that will be held accountable legally since the start of the movement. That happened in Egypt, and I've posted about him. He sadistically tortured young girls under the guise of being a church counselor. And of course, Pope Tawadros denied any affiliation with him, although the church, even after the victims reported to Pope Tawadros himself directly, the church was still airing this guy's episodes on Coptic TV channels and selling his book and distributing his books in church bookstores. It wasn't, I mean, I think even after we had exposed him on social media, his episodes were still airing on TV. So since then, the Pope one time publicly addressed the Michael Fahmy case. That was in 2021. And he denied any affiliation with him, of course. The church has decided also that they're going to wash their hands of any responsibility and put the burden on the victim to report her abuser. A lot of these cases, the victim's statute of limitations has expired, and the church knows that they are protected by the law. So that's the response that they're giving victims now, because they know that even if the victim does report, it's very unlikely that it will ever go to court. So that's what they're hiding behind at this point. I don't really have any other good news besides that I spent a lot of 2021 kind of quiet to really get myself to a place mentally and physically and spiritually and emotionally and all the things ready for the rest of my life, really, the rest of dealing with this movement. I've committed my life to this. I want throughout this coming year, I will try my best to share more of my personal journey. I did go and start therapy this year. I found an amazing therapist. I have made a lot of progress in just dealing with things day to day that come my way through this movement. And I knew, I recognized at the end of 2020, I was really just burnt out completely. And I needed to really take a minute off the social media and the exposures and things to strengthen myself to be able to do what we need to do forever. So I want to be a little bit more candid with you guys throughout this coming year about that journey and hopefully inspire other survivors to get whatever kind of support that they would like or need, and let them know that they're not the only ones going through this, and there's nothing shameful about going to therapy or coming out publicly with their stories. I want them to feel that they are supported by us, by our community, by this movement. And I started a nonprofit organization, Coptic Survivor. We haven't really fully launched yet, but we do hope that you all join the cause and keep following. And we plan on offering support to survivors, whether it's legal or mental health. We want to provide education. Hopefully we'll be building a website and provide education for prevention and resources, and really be able to build something where when a survivor comes to us, they are actually assigned someone that's going to carry them through and get them all the help that they need. Whatever way that they want to see this play out, we will support them. Whatever brings healing to them. So I guess we're just going to continue this fight. Again, I want to go back to, sorry, I kind of go on tangents. I'm trying to cover everything with you guys. But again, recently we have servants that are being caught abusing children. And one of the first things that they jump to is hiding behind, well, I'm a member of the Coptic Church. I am part of this community. I'm a servant, I'm a deacon, I'm a whatever. It doesn't matter what you are. Okay, we have bishops that are part of the Holy Synod that I actually have photos of them having sexual relations with women, and they are abusing both women, children, and men, or all, yeah, both children and adults. So it really doesn't matter at this point. The Pope himself is committing criminal activity, and so are the bishops, and so are all of the leaders in our Coptic Church that are actually mandated reporters and completely failing. I want to kind of try to spend the rest of this time and have Bubbly and Karen join us and talk about the dangers of what's happening when the church is staying this silent and not taking action. Is we have servants now that know that they can get away with this. As soon as they get caught, I want to call Abuna to come rescue me. That's who's going to save them from the police, from legal action, whatever it is. So it's becoming an enormous problem, bigger than we even thought, because if this is the example that the Coptic Church is going to set, is that you can be a priest and rape a child and still continue being a priest and receive a salary and take confessions and continue on about their lives, then of course we're going to have people within the church that are going to think that they have the same privilege. And they do have the same privilege, actually. So there has been one other servant that legal action was taken against, and that was in the Southern Diocese, or actually South Carolina. And this man raped a 12-year-old girl, and he was reported, and he served 6 years in prison. And he's currently a deacon serving at a church in Atlanta, Georgia. So that's what we have. We have abusers that are serving in our churches, and the church protects them. So, Bubbly and Karen, what do you think about that?
Go ahead. Hey everyone. So maybe
hello.
we can introduce ourselves. I'm Karen.
Bubbly.
Do you want to say what you do?
What do I do? Yeah, that's a great question. I ask myself a lot of times. So I work in healthcare. I'm in a hospital setting. So I'm a registered psychotherapist, as well as a spiritual care practitioner, or what people might be familiar with the term as chaplain. So I do that on a full-time basis. So work with a lot of different populations. I don't have too much interactions with adolescents or youth, but I do, with a little bit of interaction that comes through the hospital, I do interact, but I mostly work with the adult population. And that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, and I'm a clinical nurse specialist with a focus in pediatric and adolescent mental health and palliative care. And I am currently also almost done my master's in psychotherapy to be a psychotherapist. So I will be done in a couple of months. And again, the main folks that I see are children and adolescents who are victims of sexual violence. So yeah, want to start?
Yeah, so thank you, Sally, for sharing all that. You know, it's been the journey, and with you sharing your story publicly and everything else that's kind of unfolded from there. I mean, it's been a roller coaster ride. The one thing that I would add as well, and not to take away too much time, because I know a lot of people are going to be wanting to talk, is that one of the things that we see happening, and just to kind of piggyback on what you were saying, Sally, is kind of the clericalization of the priesthood. Right. And so a lot of people who've come and spoken to me privately, kind of offline without really wanting to be out there, is the way they see the priesthood and servants, right? There's really this kind of sanctification of priests, right? Where they clericalize them to the point of them being gods, right? And so, I mean, I'm sure we've all had this experience with them where, sometimes you might hear someone saying, well, I went to the priest to see if they can pick out the color of my car. And it's like, well, why'd you need a priest to do that? Right? So we see this movement of kind of putting them on a pedestal much higher than they should be, right? We divinize them more than they need to be, right? We look more at them as divine people than as human people, right? And we forget that they're like you and I, right? And so there has to be kind of an education that's done where we move away from that perspective, right? And I mean, I've interacted with priests. So in the position that I occupy, I work with a lot of different people who are ordained clergy, whether in different Christian denominations or different faith traditions all around. And I always find that when I interact with them, they're very much human in the way they interact with us. I've even had people come up to me in the Christian tradition who will say, don't call me priest or father or pastor, right? Just call me by my first name. Right. And that's a very, and again, that's kind of my own assumptions based on how I was raised in the Coptic community, right? You ever see a priest, you call them Abuna or father or whatever, right? So we really have to start moving away from that. And then once we start moving away from that, then maybe, as you're talking about, Sally, maybe we'll see some sort of movement happening within the church of, trying to take some sort of action, right? We're at a point right now where we say, well, no, they couldn't have done that, or no, they're, I literally had someone in her early 20s tell me, they're men of God. Men of God don't do that. They're perfect, and they're chosen by God. So once you're chosen by God, you're pretty much clean, and you have a clean record for the rest of your life. So there's no responsibility taken there. So we got to start moving away from that and start teaching our youth that, yes, these are people who have a certain role within the church, right? And this is what their role is, but they're not divine, they're not equal to God's. They are people who have a certain role, and that sometimes people can make mistakes, and people can fall, and people can sin, and all these other things, right? And then there's a process of doing things when that stuff happens, especially when it comes to engaging with sexual relations with a minor. Like, full stop. Like, you ain't going to the Pope, you're reporting that to the authorities, and people need to be aware that there's a process. And so until that happens, we're gonna unfortunately continue to glorify these men, and they're all men, right? And yeah.
And gosh, there's so much to kind of talk about, but maybe I could just add a little bit of kind of the framework that I see maybe systemically as along the lines of clericalization, which is that of attachment. And so attachment is basically just interpersonal bonding and how we are raised as children and how that kind of manifests in adulthood. It's basically healthy, how to be healthily bonded to someone on an interpersonal level, not to be confused with codependency, where you cannot function in society without other people that we have close relations to. And so I would argue heavily, and this is kind of in the literature as well, is, what kind of attachment are we fostering in our children and in our teens and our youth to have with people like priests, servants, these men of God, or even, in Egypt or other places, with nuns and things like that. What kind of attachment styles are these children growing up with that, these humans are really seen like God, so that when they have problems, they're not just seeking spiritual guidance from priests. They are seeking things that are really important to a child's development. Things like, being loved, being like feeling like they are welcome, feeling like they have purpose and agency. And so, if a priest offers that to a child, there's a strong attachment there. And we can see the culture that it's built. When we come out and say a priest has sexually violated a minor, the backlash that we get from the community saying priests could never do that, or we don't believe survivors. And so how is that, perpetuating in these otherwise supposedly safe spaces like sanctuaries and, places of worship? And so there's a huge danger in culturally how we have designed our churches and our communities, not just to enable sexual violence, but to also further traumatize and further victimize survivors when they come out, because now we no longer believe you, because these big people, these men of God, these deacons can never do such a thing. And so how are we really playing this as a greater community, and how are we really protecting children, but also standing in solidarity with survivors who come out who do not have evidence, but who need to be believed, and bar none, with zero questions, with zero even attempts of questioning, in my opinion, and to just be believed and heard. And so how are we really perpetuating those things are big systemic questions that I think need to shift hugely, especially when we're talking about the Coptic Orthodox Church. And there's lots to be learned and gleaned from those that came before us in this journey, like the Catholic Church. And why are we so insistent on just remaining within our own little bubble and continually protecting that? And so that's kind of just what I would add. I mean, we can go into a million different avenues, but Sally, we'll send it back to you.
Just one last thing, Sally, sorry. Marcus shared it in the chat, so I'll just quickly mention it. So thank you, Marcus, for sharing the article. So me and a couple of my friends, and me and Karen recently as well too, wrote an article. So kind of I guess my own strengths as well, alongside with what I do, is I love to write. So I write about these things. And so Marcus shared an article who he actually translated it for us into Arabic. So thank you for that, Marcus, last year. And so I'm sure many of you here might have already read it, but if you know others who didn't, please share that as well. We shared in that article some of the things that we wanted done, or think should be done at least, right? Of course, with Sally and everyone else's approval as well, of what needs to happen when it comes to, I guess, change really taking place, right? And first and foremost is getting legal authorities involved. And then I guess at a deeper and systemic level, which is the theme that we're talking about today, kinds of stuff that need to change in regards to how priests are ordained, what kind of education they are receiving, and kind of the post-education after being ordained that they should be receiving, things of that nature. So check that article out. A lot of people asked us to translate it. Marcus, thank you for translating it to kind of older generations of people who don't necessarily speak English as their first language. So it's there. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. And Karen, going off of what Karen was saying, another big problem I'm seeing is, and I've spoken to a lot of clergy in this past year, some mostly unpleasant, some pleasant-ish. And one of the responses that I hear is, well, what about this man's salvation? And why are you so worried about, like, okay, so you're putting money and financial like support, legal support, or let's get him the help he needs, let's get him a therapist for 2 or 3 sessions, right? And allow him to come to the church. We don't want to hold him back from possibly coming back to God, whatever, right? Well, how does the victim feel that's standing in the church next to her abuser, that the priest is allowing to serve as a deacon because of his salvation? they're not even like, if you know anything, like if you're actually trauma informed, you would know that that's not doing the abuser any good either, right? Just allowing him to continue and, oh, malish habibi, it's okay. You know, we forgive you. And that's not the way it works. These people will never change unless they're held accountable and actually do get the help they need. And we're in situations where there are abusers where, for whatever reason, they're not going to be sent to jail. They're not going to have criminal action taken against them, whether it's because the victim just can't go through with it, or and again, it is a really long traumatic process, or because the statute of limitations is expired. So what do we do with those abusers? Do we let them enter our churches? Melanie is with us from Snap. Hi, Melanie. Thank you for joining. Melanie, actually, we were having a discussion, and you know, we talked about how abusers shouldn't be allowed in the church at all. And you know, if I dare ever make that recommendation, it's like I'm walking on eggshells. Like, hey, Abuna, do you think maybe it's possible for this abuser to be banned from entering the church until he gets, or she gets, the help that they need and is cleared by a therapist to be able to be around children again? And is there a way that you know, maybe we can follow up with that therapist to make sure they're getting, that the abuser is going to therapy forever? You know, and it's like, it's almost like, how dare you ask that question, you know, when I say something like that to them. So how dare you even think that we could turn someone away from church? Well, if the abuser's there, most likely the victim will stop going to that church or completely shy away from the entire institution as a whole. So you'd rather lose the victim and push the victim away than lose the abuser. Is like, what do you guys think about that?
Like, the problem is it's not one victim, it'll be multiple victims. So they're losing a lot of people and the abuse is continuing. But, you know, I don't want to compare COVID, but for COVID, people have been pushed away and the church is closed in front of them, compared to an abuser who's still very much able to go. So it's just anyway.
Karen, you want to say something?
Yeah, I just love that kind of topic, Sally, just to bounce off. So I think there is sort of a danger of clumping all abusers into one, right? Because a lot of them have mental health, like, you know, DSM-5 things like pedophilia, things like that. And so, you know, if we're going to make a blanket, I would rather say, you know, there is an argument to be had to say, you know, how are we rehabilitating these people that are really, really sick, like pedophiles within our church, you know, and what are we doing to support them? And so I love that you're going there as a survivor, Sally, because that is super important. And until there is, you know, accountability, step 2 can never happen in healing for survivors. And so depending on what kind of sexual violence is happening, you know, and what kind of, some people are just going to be living with this for the rest of their lives. And so how do we set them up as best as possible to protect our community, which is exactly what you're alluding to, you know, lifelong rehabilitation, therapy, all of that stuff. And I think our church is doing a huge disservice to these people that they are trying to protect by allowing them around children, which, you know, if we talk about pedophiles, it's basically like dangling a carrot in front of, you know, a rabbit. I'm so bad with, is that how we say that thing? Anyways, I'm really bad at saying, so whatever that is. But yeah, and I just, it's so heartbreaking that the huge focus is on how do we just continue keeping them in the church and God and this and that, without allowing any space for, you know, their healing as well, away from what is causing the repetitive behaviors, which we know in sexual violence. You know, no wonder some of these priests that have committed these crimes have done it over and over and over again. there's a reason for that. There's repetitive behaviors because we are not changing their environments. We're keeping them in the same environment with children. And so huge disservice all around for those people that are, you know, pro-priest or pro-clergy or pro-son, you know, I don't know, men of God or whatever they want to call it. They're actually causing them a huge disservice if they want to look at it that way. Do you have something to add?
Yeah, and something just quickly based on what you were saying, Sally, and you know, of course, you know, I think, you know, we have to acknowledge what's happened, of course, as you've said countless times, and you and I have had conversations offline about this, but as well as setting up things for, you know, survivors and whatever that might look like, right? But also for these people who are committing the acts, right? Now, I mean, I'm not well versed in the literature, but Karen maybe, and I'm sure we have a couple of doctors here on the call who can maybe attest to this. There's no cure for this type of behavior, right? This is something that you will continue to receive therapy for the rest of your life, right? So then it begs the question, why not set something up where people have access to this type of therapy? These are people who clearly do need help, right? And as Karen said, like putting them in a situation where, you know, there are children or people there, that's not a good thing. You need to take them out completely, right? And that has nothing to do with God. That has nothing to do with the church. This is a legal thing now. Like, you know, you're causing harm, physical harm, psychological harm, and you need to get those people out of there, you know. And it goes back to this again, I guess, as you mentioned, and we've been mentioning, this clericalization of how we look at priests and how we raise our children and how we've been raised. You know, and a lot of us, I'm sure, have had to kind of undo a lot of that thinking. I know I did. You know what I mean? Because I was one of those people who I'd go to my priest and be like, yeah, can you pick out the color of my car? Because I didn't know how to think for myself. You know, I had no critical thinking. And I'm sure we've all have our own stories about that. But also setting up as well support for them, because they when you read the DSM-5 about this, it's a real thing, and it's not going away. Like, it's not. They're going to have to live with it for the rest of their life. So let's also help them.
Yeah.
There's also some indications that people who abuse in religious situations are not just pedophiles, they're sociopaths. There is no cure for sociopathy. And I think, if you will, one of the tests might be, okay, we're not going to let you come to the church. You're very sick. And just like someone who's hospitalized, the priest will come to you without his children. But anyway, and yeah, there's only one case where I've known in an Orthodox church where it's been done. It was a Romanian parish in the Midwest. I can't remember exactly where now, but and I'm not sure that it was done because of the abuser's offenses, but simply because he was not a member of the tribe, so to speak. He was a Black man in a Romanian parish. And so when his abuse came to light, they said, no, you can no longer come to church, which was interesting, but I don't know that often happens where there's other ties in a close-knit ethnic community. You know, maybe he's somebody's uncle or somebody's brother or something like that. You don't see that happening, but it's something that you need to think about. Or if you're going to have him there, every Sunday, it needs to be announced that, you know, people, this man is here, here's what he looks like, keep your children away from him, and he has an escort. I would think that would be more embarrassing, but I also think it's a kind of a test. If someone is willing to put up with that, then maybe they really are interested in the religion. If they say, forget that, I'm not doing that, you know, then that tells you something about them. Anyway.
Wow, Melanie, that's a really good point. I never thought of it that way. Wow. Yeah, I mean, another thing is, going off of what you just said, yeah, the church is a hospital for the sick, but if going to the church clearly is not helping this person, then maybe they need to stay home and have, like what you said, Melanie, the priest come visit them there. If it's no longer serving them positively and bringing them closer to God, then why continue to allow them to go? Wow, that's Very important. A lot of people, not a lot, I've been asked this a few times. Are you only helping survivors, or are you going to help abusers as well? And it would just like irk me at first when I hear that. I'm like, I'm not ready for that right now, right? But now that we're seeing this a lot more in the past few months, and with a lot of help from therapy, I'm trying to be a little bit more open-minded, and I do see a need for us to also be able to manage the problem and help these abusers to get mental health support so that we can help the children and families in their communities to stay safe. So that's something I'm gonna start to kind of look into to do that, and it'll be probably under our accountability still, our accountability section of what we want to do for our services with Coptic Survivor. So yeah, I want to open the floor for any questions. I know we've been talking for 50 minutes now. I don't want to take up too much of everybody's time. So do you have, I know Dina asked a question earlier regarding Samah's case. Since her children are being harassed and intimidated by this grown man, can they file restraining orders against him? So they were actually harassed by phone and text message and in person by their friends at church, which kind of makes it to me a little worse that these young kids at church are harassing Samah's children. And there are people that are that were messaging Samah and her family and her kids from you know, like Google Voice numbers and things. Like they're not even showing their identities. So there were things done like that. There was a group that are Betty fans or lovers or whatever of this abuser that got together from 5 different churches under him, because he's the vicar over many churches. So there were 5 different churches that put all their choirs together and made up a song about Betty praising him, which, yeah, and they spread it all over social media. And that's actually, according to our religion, is illegal in our religion to venerate a living person. There has only been one other song made about someone while he was living, and that was Pope Shenouda, and that wasn't even right. So there's just different types of harassment, all different types of harassment that Samah and her family have been exposed to. And these actions did cause actually other victims that were abused by the same priest and other priests in the area to completely shy away from taking legal action. Samah is the last one standing still. So Samah, do you want to just pop in and say hi?
Yeah, hi everybody. Yeah, if anybody have any questions, I am here to answer your questions.
Yeah, does anybody want to ask Samah anything about her case, or any questions or any comments even? Anyone want to add anything?
Samah, do you want to give an update of where things are up to now?
Yeah, I can. The position gonna start on the 19th. This gonna be for me and Betty's attorneys. And the 21st gonna be my husband with Betty attorneys. And
Is that
after
January?
yeah, January. It's supposed to get the hearing this month on the 5th, but they postponed it because they want to do like the deposition first. And my attorney said he's working in a big firm of lawyer. So he said once they do the deposition, because they just want to test the victims if she's weak person or she's strong enough, how they can handle the case, because they ask for settlement as well. his attorneys, there are 5. For Bay himself, he has 2 attorneys, and one for the church, the other one for the archdiocese. The archdiocese, it means Pope Tawadros, because before I filed the case, me and my husband sent to him all the documents we have, even the recording by the priest confess to my husband that he is do some sin with me, and he begged him to forgive him and this stuff. Also, Sally, she has a copy from this recording. What happened that the Pope covered up, and after that I heard from one priest who's close to the Pope. He's our friend, actually. So he said, because I was blaming the Pope, why he covered up, why we reached to the point that we have to go for legal case instead of can be solved in our church without the publish anything bad about our church. And because some people are like say, hey Sama, why you did that, this is very bad for our church reputation and blah blah blah. So I said, this is not my mistake. I didn't start directly after this incident to go to publish what happened exactly between me and him. The first of all, I went to the church, I went to the Pope, and I have a lot of messages to his private phone, me and my husband. We sent to him everything, and also for some of the bishops. But what I heard from this priest who is our friend, he said this because some of the bishops threatening the Pope if he gonna pull Bei from the church and let him go to Egypt, or let him resign from as a priesthood or something like that. This is very bad reputation for the other priests, and this will open a window for people who has a problem with any priest to go and complain by the same way. So they threatening the Pope, if you're gonna do that, we're gonna resign. So I don't think this.
Are you saying that they're afraid that there'll be false allegations of sexual abuse by other priests? Because I'm just trying to clarify in my mind. False allegations are really, really rare.
Yes.
Yeah, I think they're afraid that the flood doors are going to open and they don't know what they're going to do with it. And they're also, they also know that they don't have the capacity of doing proper investigations. The last thing I heard last night from the UK is that the Pope has basically said, anyone who has a problem, go to the law. If the law finds the person guilty, the church will take action. It's the opposite of what Pope Shinura, in a sense. I mean, I know there's some issues that were there, but in comparison, the church did take action somewhat in the past to do something. Now we don't even have the something.
Yeah, I think maybe he only took action in some cases, because there's a lot of cases where he's severely failed. Like me, for example, Pope Shenouda was aware of my abuser when he was still in Minya, before he even came to the States and abused me there. But
at least there was some response in the past, Sally, some, minor, but some. Now there's none. And so with the some, you could have worked forward, but with the none, you do have to go to the legal system. You do have to, and the DSM and all of those things, I don't think the church recognizes, even with marital affairs. When I mean, we had a man murder his wife in Sydney. He had, well, they claimed he was insane. He had lots of mental health issues. They don't recognize it. They call it evil spirits. I've seen a lot of stuff. So for them to actually nut out and understand and accept and recognize mental health and pedophilia is a long journey of education that we will all have to go through for that to shift at some point. I don't want to take too much time away from Samah's comments though.
Thank you, Hanan. Real quick, let's go to Catherine. She's had her hand up for a while. Hi, Catherine.
Hi, Sameh. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Sally, for putting this on. When I talk to people, a lot of the time they have a very problematic understanding of what counts as evidence under the law. And since you have all of this, what people would consider better evidence, even though your word is perfectly adequate, what evidence under the law, is there any way that that can be shared, or is it all, or have your lawyers told you have to really just keep it under the belt until all this litigation finishes?
In the beginning, yes, it was like he said, no, you cannot share anything. Please keep these documents. But now, because it's public record, so I can share whatever in the public record, I can share it. Like the audio or something, I think Sally can send it, not me. But other than that, yes, it's all recorded in the public record. You can check on the public record under his name, Bai, Antonio's Bai. You're gonna find everything related to this case.
The website's down because I've actually tried to look. I'm a lawyer in Canada, so I don't have great access to like American judicial system things, but I'm just wondering if that can be in any way facilitated to me or to another Canadian, so that way we can have those conversations with people in our diocese.
Yeah, I'm actually, we can share the link here maybe. Samah, do you have the link that you can share in the chat on you? If not, I'm planning on a post soon with Samah to provide an update on the case, and I will provide the website in my bio. And
also there's, Sally, I don't mean to cut you off, but we have PACER, which is PACER, which is public access, whatever, and anyone can sign up and you can access any court case in the US. The only thing is they charge you like 5 cents, like a record or page or something like that.
Oh.
So for my Canadian lawyers, you can sign up for PACER. It's PACER, and you can access and have access to any records that you need for any court case. So
awesome. Thanks, guys. I won't take up more time. Thank you.
no problem.
Marcus?
We cannot hear you. We cannot hear you. You're on mute.
Do you hear me now?
Yeah, no.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Samah to Samah and the kids. It's utterly sad that this is happening and all these threats are happening. It actually reminds me and actually this has been the main reason why I'm supporting Sally's movement and Coptic Survivor, is the fact that my mom was a church leader, and there was a priest who was abusing multiple girls in that church, and I lived through the fact that getting threats over when I was a kid, getting threats over the phone randomly by people was such like horrible things, like acid attack on us as a kids and my mom as well. So it was like horrible things. So this shouldn't happen. And actually the church was super reluctant for years, and my mom and the whole family had to go to prison, and we weren't actually directly affected. We were just advocates. So and that was at Bob Shinoda's era, and going through multiple bishops. It was like super sad that nobody was moving, and actually the hierarchy was intimidating my mom and the survivors of speaking up. So it's just sad that this is a continuous repetition. And actually, Bob Shinoda said to my mom, "What should I do to him? He's my son. He's my son," about that abuser. So it's a repeated same narrative, systemically, not necessarily about figures, but it's happening over and over. And yeah, it's sad. I'm so sorry that this has been happening to you and the kids.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that's why the number of abuser now, it's like a lot, because they know if they gonna do something wrong, nobody will punish them. So that's why. And I'm glad actually that Sally and other victim, hopefully she can join us, from the same priest, they encouraged me to go and file a case against Becky. So I'm so glad to do that. And after that, I'm not the only one. I have a document from other victim. Also, she's a lady and she has 2 sons, but she doesn't want to talk. And after that, I know that Becky paid for her like 200,000, something like that, to quiet her and her husband. Yes. And there is other victim who was like teenager. She got also abused from him, sexual abuse. And there is a 4th one who's writing a declaration, but anonymous, from the same priest. So it looks like it's not only one person.
It's never one person. It's never ever going to be one person.
From the same priest.
Yeah.
So this is a ridiculous point in the case, that it's not even only one. They can say, yeah, maybe she's liar, maybe she's blah, 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 but there is a lot. And he's still going to church as a priesthood, and I'm not. Me and my kids, we cannot. We didn't go to Coptic church anymore. I don't want. Because every priest now, he's under his vicar. So I don't want to put myself or my family in a bad situation with anybody else in the church.
Yeah, I mean, when abusers are kept in the church and they're given privileges the way that priests have like this, you know, you would rather really keep the abuser in the church and throw out the victim and their families. Is that what we're doing? Is that what Christ taught Coptic leaders to do? It's insane to me that they'd rather keep the abuser there and force the victims out. But they are willing to do anything, even commit criminal activity and spend millions of your dollars to cover up and maintain their pure image and their nice reputation. And they don't care if they lose us. I'm uncomfortable attending Coptic church as well, especially in the Southern Diocese, who's been completely silent still. And because Bishop Yusuf, the leader here, has covered up for so many abusers and has committed criminal activity. So that's where we're at. Lovely and Karen.
Sorry, it's taking us a while. Hey, I just want to say something based on what you were saying, Samah, with kind of like faith and religion as well. And I guess I see a lot of this in my work as well too, is that and something that I want to say is that we are not defined by the physical place that we go to, right? Our faith and what we believe in and how we live it out is not defined by the physical building, right? It's not like you know, we've all had our different negative experiences with the church, but it still does not hold power over us or sway over us, right? How we decide to live our own spiritual lives day in and day out is dictated by the community that we surround ourselves with, right? And it's based on that community of people who love us and support us is how I would say our faith should continue to be fostered and to grow, right? And so we have a community here amongst ourselves where we can all support each other, and that's what I would say is just keep going, right? A lot of times people have a hard time letting, sorry, what? Something, especially within our community, hard to let go, especially with having kids and things like that, right? We want them to be connected somehow, but I would say there's always different ways to kind of create that community, and you can always find ways to grow in that.
You are right, but I think for adult people, it's different from a teenager people, because my children are still 19 years and I have twins, 19 years, and I have a young daughter, she's 17. So this is a critical age. They need to be in a church. They need to be served from a servants. they need to take communion, they need to go for confession. But unfortunately now, they lose everything. They don't trust any priest. They don't want to go. Even me and their dad, we went to other church. It's Rome Orthodox. They don't want to come with me till now. I begging them every Sunday that we're gonna go, and we agree that we're gonna go, but they never come with me till now. So my kids, the most people who are suffering, it's my kids.
Yeah.
And
That's so harmful and hurtful to hear. I'm so sorry they're going through that, Sameh. And
thank you.
That's exactly the attachment injury that a teenager or even preteens need not go through. They're in a developmental stage where they want acceptance, they want to feel community. That is the most important thing. It's when they kind of leave their parents and kind of build their own community. And when they've been raised in the church community, where that's where their faith was nourished, their community was nourished, all of a sudden there's an attachment injury, for sure their trust is going to be broken. And how awful that is, and really, really difficult. Not catastrophic. I mean, I've worked with a lot of adolescents that come through it with a lot of work and a lot of healing. And there are healing communities, but everyone grows out of that at different stages. And that is one of the biggest problems here, is that, even though the crime itself happened to you, and I'm so sorry to hear that, you're saying your children are the ones that are suffering the most, because what a troubling time for this to happen to them. And so we also need to be mindful of that, and be mindful of, Sameh, you bring up such a good point, even those that are not victims themselves, that are looking onto this and saying, what would happen to me if I spoke out? Or what would happen to me if I X, Y, and Z? There are little eyes that are watching. There are little ears that are hearing. And what kind of modeling and examples are we setting for children and adolescents growing up in our communities? And so, yeah, I'm so troubled to hear that. But maybe a message of hope is that, in due time, hopefully, and God willing, they'll find some retribution and kind of rehabilitation from all of this.
Yeah, hopefully. Thank you.
It's like they really do take away everything from us. It's like you grow up in this church, you put your entire life and family and trust into them and money, and you grow up in this community, and then as soon as they abuse you, they want you out, they push you out, they take away everything. When I first exposed what happened to me, the first action, the only action actually that the Southern Diocese took, was to kick me out of the basketball league that I had been directing and serving for 15 years. They took away my service. They took away my voice. When I tried to speak in a church last month, Pope Tawadros canceled that. They have harassed and abused me in so many different ways. And look at Samah's family, harassed and abused. I mean, they can't, like, where do we go? Where do we go from here? So you all just go about your lives with your abusers in churches and just take away everything. She's lost her family. She's lost her friends. She's lost her entire sense of community, her sense of serving God. I've lost many family members as well. We've lost them to the church. The church has this grasp and hold on our family members, even the people that we love and that we care about the most, and that we, people in our lives, they have a choice to make. Do I choose to support the victim and stand in solidarity, or do I just continue about my life? Because the victim has lost everything. So why would I put myself in that position too? That's how people think. And I am so thankful for all of you that are here today, because we have 20 million Copts around the world that should be concerned about this, and maybe 20 showed up today. And that's a huge problem. we've been advertising this for days, maybe over a week now on multiple platforms. Thousands of people have seen these posts, and we have 20 people maybe that are members of the Coptic Church that came today. This is a problem.
But it's also a huge start. It's where you weren't a year and a half ago.
That's true. That's true too. It's just, I feel like a lot of people don't even want to be bothered with this. And I mean, we'll keep fighting. It doesn't, David and Goliath. That's where we're at. So
Christmas and holidays. So maybe next month will be a bit different.
hopefully we spread the word and we have more people participating in this movement with us. Hopefully we'll start to see some change this year. I know me and my team are not going to stop, and I think probably all of us here are not going to stop. I don't see how we can with the way things are. Does anyone have any other questions or comments? We're running over an hour now. Thank you, Lydia's put in, actually a lot of people have shared some really great links in the chat, so be sure to check that out, guys. Does anybody want to say any final words? Oh, Sarah.
Hi, I don't have a question. I just want to say thank you to Sally and for Samah for sharing your stories, and we're praying for you and we're here to support you in any way that we can. Our heart is with you. You guys have an unbelievable level of support and amount of love coming your way. So I know that it's hard, but it's going to get better soon. And hopefully this doesn't have to be repeated again. I'm so sorry for all of this that's happening to you. It's not fair and it's not right, but it's because of your strength and your stories that you're sharing that it's going to be the only way that we move forward as a community. So I'm just so thankful for you and so sorry for what's happened, but don't lose heart.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you.
Anybody else, guys? Again, thank you all for joining us. I'm so thankful for each and every single one of you here. Murray, hi Murray.
Hey, sorry to ask a question while we were wrapping up. But I'm a bit perplexed by this discussion around serving or helping abusers, assuming too that anyone who'd want to be helped is someone who's like coming forward about what they've done or what their feelings are or whatever, and like themselves seeking help. But so many of the cases we're listening about is situations in which people are denying it or being protected by the church, or the church itself is attacking victims. And so I'm wondering, while you're like thinking about building this nonprofit, are these separate categories of abusers or pedophiles or et cetera that we're discussing? But also perhaps like an opportunity, I'd love to hear more about what is the nonprofit and what are the different arms of it, and what is it now? What do you imagine it's going to become, et cetera?
Thank you. So I'm starting to, well, okay, let me just start from the beginning. We have 3 major categories that we want to be working on, and that's support, accountability, and education or prevention. So that's what mainly we'll be building on. As far as what type of survivors are we serving, or what kind of abusers we are talking about. In the course of starting the movement and having so many people reach out, we've also had a lot of, in addition to clergy sex abuse, we've had just other abusers in the church, servants or members of the church that are abusing both sexually or physically or in other ways. So I think it's not that we're shifting, we're kind of just broadening, I guess, who we're serving, because I don't want to turn anybody away, because when they come to me or come to my team, most likely they've already gone to the church and have been turned away or not had the help that they needed or anything like that. So a big part of or a large number of those people happen to also be domestic violence victims. So I don't know if you guys notice, I've added some pop of color to our some of recently in some of my posts, and got this tattoo. And so these colors actually are the ribbon awareness colors for child sex abuse, sexual assault, and domestic violence. And so I plan on hopefully in the next 2 years being able to build something to officially open and start serving domestic violence victims or women who are in dangerous marriages or relationships that the church has completely turned their back on or further abused and traumatized. I've spoken to women who have been in abusive marriages, and the process of divorce through the church is unimaginable. If anyone here has suffered through this, you're welcome to speak up or share your experience with us. Or if there are any survivors here of any type of abuse that want to speak up, you are welcome to. But yeah, so as far as the organization, we want to be able to help or support all survivors with mental health support, legal support, any resources that they need. I mean, anything that they need really will help them. We'll help relocate, hopefully in the future. We will help relocate these women or children or people that are in dangerous relationships or situations. We do want to also focus on places like Egypt where it's a complete disaster. So we'll be serving people globally, not only in Egypt and in North America, but globally. There are a lot of women that are in very dangerous situations in Egypt, and we will have a way to help them get out of the country, God willing. That is part of the plan. As far as accountability, the accountability section, we will expose as much truths as legally possible. And we will, if there are priests or churches that are willing to actually work with us on providing whatever help is needed to get these abusers either into prisons or, charged criminally or, through the legal route, we want to help with that. And if there is no chance of them being held accountable legally, then we want to make sure also to get them the mental health help that they need. And in order to make it safe for everybody, really. I mean, these young men that we're raising, like what are we doing? We're raising these young men to come up as rapists and abusers that just think that they can hide behind their priest whenever they get into trouble. So hopefully we'll be able to provide more education to prevent that from happening. And that's, that's the final section or category that we have. We are always open for suggestions, or if anyone wants to help or volunteer and you have a great idea and you are willing to execute, please feel free to reach out. Karen, did you want to say anything? Or did anyone else have any questions before?
I think you covered most of it, Sally. And from, I know it's way over time, but from a domestic violence and the process within the church, in future sessions, happy to speak to that as a lived experience myself. And so maybe today's not, the day to go through it just because I'm mindful of time, but happy to speak on that on a future date.
Sure, whatever you feel comfortable with. We have stay for a couple minutes if you want, but it's up to you. We can do it.
So I mean, like really briefly, it mimics very much and not to take away from survivors of child sexual abuse, because that's a whole other, I mean, it's not comparable whatsoever. Everybody's got their own lived experience, but they do set up, they do have a set up council that tries you, as in puts you through a trial. You have to submit evidence. So very much not trauma-informed priests that sit on these councils that try you. None of them have any training in anything that involves, you know, psychological, physical, sexual trauma whatsoever. And it's quite a disturbing process to go through. A lot of people go through PTSD, much like, you know, other survivors, because of the need for them to continuously call you crazy for what you have to share. And especially if the partner or the perpetrator is an affluent member of the Coptic community, or has ties to anybody that is in the hierarchy. It's a whole different ball game, and essentially it takes sometimes many years of a process of you retelling your story and submitting different things, and then they want you to sit through a psychiatric evaluation, and it's very much focused and rooted in narcissism and in narcissistic abuse, and they really gaslight you in many ways. And that's not just my experience, but the experience of many. And there is a council, if anyone is interested in knowing more about that council, it's at least in North America, with in cities that do not have a diocese. So I'm based in Toronto, so we don't have a diocese. So the diocese that covers domestic violence and divorce is ccffaa.org. And it's quite the interesting process. So yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Disaster. Thank you, Karen, for sharing. Oh God, we got a lot of work to do, y'all. So thank you all for attending. I want us all to keep Samah and her family and all survivors in our thoughts. Samah has a big battle that she's going to be fighting this year. Depositions coming up soon, so that's the next thing. I don't know if you guys are familiar with what depositions are, but basically as a victim, you get just completely poked and prodded by your abuser's lawyer. And it's a very unpleasant, to say the least, experience. It's a very traumatic experience. And it's hours of the abuser's lawyers trying to find any holes in your story, accuse you of being all kinds of things besides a victim of their client. So sending her lots of love and peace and power, and we will support you, Samah, and be by your side through that, and any other survivors that need us. So again, I'm so thankful for everyone that made time to come today. We're just getting started. Hopefully you all go back to your communities and share some of the things that we discussed today, and we can start really growing our community of support for Coptic survivors and other survivors as well. So thank you all. I love you all. And we'll see you guys next month, every first Sunday of every month. All right, y'all. Thank you so much. Bye.